أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Jazakum Allah khair for joining us for another session with Yaz Guru, where we'll be going through how to be in love in your marriage, inshallah. We've done previous sessions with her on a few different topics, and I'm going to quickly let her in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. How are you?
How are you? Peace be upon you. How's it going? How's your life? How is everything?
Great, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Alhamdulillah. Mashallah, you're looking great as always.
Me and you are kind of matching today.
Yeah, I see your pastel colors, mashallah. You have the ruh vibe going on, mashallah. Love it.
Yeah. That's right. It is. It's like a whole. You're right. Like ruh has this whole vibe. Those are the colors. That was subliminal. That's why I chose.
Mashallah, mashallah. Jazakumullah khair. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Alhamdulillah. It's so great to have you. And I just want to pass on some feedback to you. Yesterday, my husband actually was talking to somebody, and in passing, he mentioned it was a brother, and he's struggling with some issues with a marriage situation. And in passing, he just said, "Oh, when I was watching one of the lives by Ruh," and I was like, "Allahu Akbar," and he said it was great. So I was like, "MashaAllah, that's always great to hear." So Jazakumullah khair. It's really, really beneficial, even for me as somebody who's working in the field and trying to give advice and help people. I'm finding it really great to apply the practical tips that you offer. If those of you who have not watched the previous sessions, the last one we did was on how and when to address sensitive topics before you actually get married. Some of you may be struggling with those things, so definitely it was a great session. Go back and watch it. Prior to that, we did a session on how to find a husband the halal way. If you're not married and you're looking to get married, great session. Also, if you're part of an organization or people approach you asking you to help them find a spouse, then there was some really, really great tips. Definitely recommend you watching it. So today's session is, we're kind of fast forwarding a little bit into the relationships because we had a lot of feedback. People were requesting, please, can you do something about marriage? And I think one of the major issues that's currently sort of bothering people, and I know personally myself, I'm constantly getting calls from people saying that, due to COVID, my partner is driving me insane. Like before, we'd have to carve out time for one another. Now we're constantly in each other's space. So before, when I'd be, we'd cook dinner, sit down, have a chat in the evening. He'd tell me about his day, I'd tell him about my day. But now there's no such thing as kind of catching each other up because we both know exactly what's happening. We're in each other's face constantly all the time. Some people have lost their jobs, so it's a real tough time. So my first question would be, for those people, what would you sort of advise them, because that's a real tough place to be in.
It is. I just start by invoking the name of God, by sending peace and salutations upon the Prophet Muhammad and his companion and his family, and also in the prayer of Sayyidina Musa, of Moses, that God expands his chest and removes any impediment in his path, in his speech and his path, so that the people can learn from him. So I want to just say that COVID has been a very big point of pressure for our society, for the globe. You're not alone in feeling the pressure that it has created for the people who haven't lost jobs. They've been cut back on hours as well, so people now have more free time. They have less money. It's a very much a pressure cooker situation. But I will say also, as much as possible, in every single difficulty that comes upon us, there is an opportunity. There's this book I read to my children called "What Do You Do with a Problem?" It's an incredible book. It's called "What Do You Do with a Problem?" And it's a book for children, but it's really a book for adults. And it's this entire story of this child who is running away from a problem they've created. A problem in their mind, a problem they want to hide from, that they've created all sorts of scary ideas about. And how they solve the problem at the very end is that they realize that they have to tackle it head on, that the only way past is through, and that when they looked at that problem head on, they realized this is an opportunity that only comes once in a lifetime. Like if we could shift the way that we think, like COVID is, let's just say, ya Allah, please, let COVID be the only time that this happens to us, right? Like let's hope that this is really just a, you know, like we're not going to see anything like this for another 100, 200 years, right? Yeah, I could link the book. Yeah, it's called What to Do with the Problem. It's a lovely children's book. So anyways, but it teaches your children coping. It teaches your children coping and resilience, and to take every problem with an opportunity. So I always say, like, a pandemic is a terrible thing to waste. Pandemic is a terrible thing to waste. So you've got all this family time, you've got all this spouse time. How do we actually navigate this space to see it as an opportunity for growth, or an opportunity of great pressure that comes an opening? We know from a Quranic perspective that the difficulty and ease, they come together, right? So they are coming together. In this difficulty, there is ease. For me in particular, it's just, you know, spending more time with my children has been like illuminating for me, right? You know, illuminating for me. And at the same time, it's been extremely difficult as well. So I will just say that for your spouse, if you're spending a ton of time with them, I think the key here is to create some separate space in the house, walking outside, in the garage, in the basement, in any particular friend, for example, that you've been sheltering with, a family member that you've been you need to have every week, there has to be separate time. I always say a 70-30 split is what we should be looking for. 70% of the time that you spend should be with family, with spouse, you know, obligations, but 30% should be kind of on your own, doing stuff either with friends outside, grabbing a coffee with them outside, or with your own family, with your own self, so that you know, spend time outside in reflection, that you're journaling, that you write poetry, that you're doing art, whatever it might be. So people create in different ways. Sometimes they create by cooking, for example. I know that with for me, for example, that's a big stress relief. But with COVID, cooking became a stress inducer. It became something that actually created stress for me. So I had to figure out, okay, I need to actually step away from everything, and I need to make funny videos, for example. So, like, you know, I never did these videos before COVID, and it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity that kind of presented itself. It was a way for me to have a creative outlet. I'm not saying all of you guys need to do what I did, but it'd be cool. Like, why not? Like, the world is waiting for your perspective. And I think that it's important to understand that also, like, there's this urgency that we're getting from COVID that some people are turning into like laziness. And no, there's urgency actually with this COVID thing. The urgency is that life is short. The urgency is that this world is waiting for your gifts and your talents. And like, what are you doing? There's a mass exodus for people right now also outside of the workforce. So we know also that there's a ton of people outside the workforce, American workforce right now, and that employers can't even find people to fill the jobs that they have. And the reasons they say that, I was just reading this this morning, the reason they're saying is this because COVID kind of shifted things for people, this urgency of saying, like, I don't like what I'm doing right now in my job. I don't actually like what my career is at. I want to shift things. So instead of in your mind thinking, I can't get away from my husband, I can't get away from my wife, she's always here, instead focus all your energy in thinking, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to be? What are the different things I want to try? Because this is a global moment. I think also it helps to not think that you're by yourself, that you are just on your own feeling these crazy feelings. You're not crazy. And if you have a spouse that's making you feel like you're crazy, I would tell you that this is the time to say, hey, there's a ton of research on this. I'm actually not nuts. I am reassessing my life right now. And so are millions of people across the world. So I think that this is a time of reassessing and of urgency. And I think we need to put that forward, but you need that alone time. So I think the 70-30 split is a good outlet. I know for some people it's been very difficult because they have family members who are sick or who have passed due to this experience. And that grieving process is very difficult to do in an alone setting. And my heart and my prayers and my thoughts are with you, people who have experienced that. We also know that there was a very trying moment with the BLM movement, with the Black Lives Matter issue, with, you know, George Floyd's death, kind of showing to America, because it's a pandemic, there's this urgency, we're all together here, there's just an opportunity that people are captive in front of their televisions or captive in front of their phones saying, oh my goodness, like, I actually have to address these racial inequities. Or that this is a moment of difficulty for the Palestinians, a time of Palestinian solidarity that never existed before. So this is an opportunity. I know it's difficult. I know it's difficult. I'm not you know, using toxic positivity to be like, it's fine, everything's okay. No, it is flipping difficult, and there is breaking of your heart. But this world is going to break your heart, people. This world is going to break your heart. So while there is heartbreak, there's also heart growth. There's also heart realignment. There's also heart reassessing. And so I want you to reassess as much as possible your relationship in that light. And I always recommend, you know, like a weekly check-in with couples. And that weekly check-in consists of sitting with your spouse and saying, what went right this week? What went right this week? Start off by saying that. Because you're always in each other's faces. Okay, I get it. But have you really stepped back and talked about what occurred this week in a global way? And by the way, you know, all of us have the time, hopefully, and the resources. You could just get like a little notebook and just write in it so that you can remember, today this happened and this was really positive, so that you don't forget it. It could be in your iPhone, it could be your iPad, but really try to do this idea of muraqabah or muhasabah that's in our spiritual tradition. We have a tradition that is thinking about assessing what's happening. And if you don't write it down, if you don't remember, if you're not reflecting on it, then how will you ever communicate it? Instead, it's like trauma that, or happiness, for example, that dissipates in the body. Instead of concentrating that energy and saying, this happened, I'm going to let it go. And that might have happened, and I'm going to remember it so that I can share it with my spouse later on. So I recommend a weekly check-in where you talk about what went right, then what did not go well, right? What did not go well? And then finally, how can you feel more supported by your spouse in that week? How can you feel more supported in that spouse? So you ask, then you make an ask. I would feel more supported by you this week if you did X, or if you listened, or if you gave me the opportunity to go do this thing on my own, or if I had to only cook on these days, whatever it might be that you need to feel supported, or that you pick up the dry cleaning or pick up the kids, or, you know, have them for a full day, whatever it might be that you need. I think it's really important to communicate that. I think what happens often in marriages is that, you know, they say that breakdown in communication, breakdown of an emotional connection with your spouse is one of the major hallmarks of the beginning of disconnecting from each other, and potentially infidelity, potentially not wanting to be in your marriage anymore. I think that the stress of this pandemic has also caused people to, you know, to want to not be in the marriage anymore, or to look outside the marriage for fulfillment, because it's a time of a global reckoning. I want you to understand that many millions of people are going through this reassessment of their lives. And it's okay also to say, like, you know, this is my worth, this is my value, this is what I want. That's okay. But I think that if you're in a marriage, you have to try. You have to try. And a part of trying is having these kind of weekly check-ins and saying, this is what went well, this is what did not go well, and this is how I can feel supported this week. So I think it's just a practical step. It's helped a lot of marriages, I'm telling you, because they've never had an organized structure where they do this. In therapy, sometimes they call it the powwow session. So therapists have these kinds of talks that help, you know, spouses talk to each other.
So, you know, I've got a question, because I know that you mentioned something that everything that you said was great. I've got a couple of things that I know that I was talking to a sister who was really struggling with just communicating with her spouse. And she said that before they got married, predominantly they would speak over text. So if she had an issue, there was anything that they were, you know, uncomfortable with, it was much easier to communicate that because they were texting each other.
Yep.
But now that they're actually married and constantly in each other's space, she said that it's extremely difficult for me to I didn't realize how difficult it was to communicate with him in person. So what would you say to somebody in that situation?
Yeah, man, this is a phenomenon actually that drives a lot of what I had said in our first session, which is that don't have a primarily text or phone call conversation with somebody for over 2 weeks, because what ends up happening is that you end up sort of feeling like I'm missing out on the person that I was connected with, because you were connected with an idea of a person rather than the person in front of you. So take baby steps. So if you're used to texting your difficulties or your disagreements in order to communicate, some therapists recommend actually having a notebook where you write to each other. You write to each other exactly what the issue is, and that there is an exchange of this notebook. And instead of talking about it, because maybe it might be difficult for some people to have those communication skills, that they can read it, reflect on it, and answer the next day. So that there is this time of processing. A lot of people need that processing who are, I would say, primarily texters or who are comfortable in that space. Verbally communicating, making that eye contact, having the comfort to say what you really mean to your spouse. Sometimes people don't have the heart to do it, and that is the art of letter writing. That's the art of writing. But do I think that texting your spouse or writing to your spouse for the majority of your marriage is a smart idea? No. And I think you have to take small baby steps to get out of that, to be able to speak to each other directly, eye to eye, and heart to heart. So I do think that if you can do the notebook project of kind of writing your issues out, and you can try it out for, let's say like a month or two. And if it's going well, start reading what you wrote out loud after that month or two. Maybe read out loud what you wrote without making the eye contact. Just take these baby steps, read it out loud. Then that begins, okay, now I'm saying it out loud. Then after a month or two of that, you get to the point where maybe you have notes. It's not in the notebook that you guys, but you have notes, little bullet points that you have in front of you, and you say, this is how I feel, and you go through each of those bullet points as sort of talking points instead of having the whole script or whatever written out. It's not a script, but all of the dialogue that you want to have. And I think that's how you slowly get yourself into a place of comfort. But you can't do that without a spouse that's receptive.
Right.
Your spouse's response is everything. It's everything. So I will say this to both, to both sides. Try your best to have an openness with each other that doesn't have a chilling effect on the dialogue. Some people get so offended. They get so offended by what's being shared by someone from their heart that they shut down the dialogue, that it chills the whole conversation. They're like, that's a form of disrespect. Like, if you disagree with me, if you say something that is criticizing me, that's a form of disrespect. Let's try to get out of that dialogue. Instead, I feel this, using I statements. I feel neglected. I feel alone. I feel hurt. I feel whatever it might be. And using these I statements to share how you feel, that's sort of the key. Because if you're communicating in that way and your spouse is still closed off, then this is not a safe place, and this may not be the best relationship for you, because you can't communicate, or you need to have a third party involved, because there's no way to actually have this in a safe space where you're dialoguing with each other. I will also say that now more than ever, there is an ability to have a virtual third party enter your home without actually physically being in your home. So this is the time to get, someone like Sophia, who has, therapy and counseling background, chaplaincy, for example, to be involved in your life. This is an easy time to get another person involved if you're coming to a stalemate and you are not finding each other. We want you to find each other. We want you to be in a place of connection. And I think that starts by having a positive view of your spouse out first, that you have a positive view of what connected you originally as the springboard of every day, that you wake up and you make an affirmation to yourself and you say, thank you, God, for waking me up from this mini sleep, this mini death in the sleep that I did. So number one, thanking God that you're awake. Then saying, today's going to be a beautiful day. I am choosing my spouse today. And I am choosing my spouse today based on these positive factors that I saw in them from day one. And you put that out front as a mantra, as an affirmation, and people say, oh, this is garbage. No, it's not. This is actually prophetic, because the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was actually very, very much about those affirmations. In fact, there's an affirmation of faith that is one of the mutawatir, mutawatir ad'iyah. So in the books of dua, one of the the solid narration chains from the Prophet is that every single day, you know, as an affirmation of your faith, say, I believe in Islam as a religion. I believe in God as my Lord. I believe in the Prophet Muhammad as a prophet. It might seem like, why would you say that? Because because affirmations are important. Because directing your heart and redirecting your heart is critical. That's why. That's why. Because affirmations are an important way to put the positive energy out.
Beautiful, mashallah. I think that's really, really great practical advice. And I love that in these sessions you give really practical advice that you can actually implement. A lot of the times, you know, people go to therapy, they go to, you know, I actually was talking to somebody and we had a chaplaincy call, and she said that, you know, I've been and most of what it consists of is like breathing techniques to calm down. And I laughed, but I love that this is practical tips that you can apply into your life that inshallah hopefully will show results for your personal growth, for your relationship growth, inshallah.
I have really just quick about the breathing techniques. It's also prophetic that the Prophet is saying, you know, if you're angry, to change positions, to change your body, to put your body in motion so that you can reorient yourself, you can reground yourself in your body. So it's not, you know, it's like we want that and we want additional things. So everything that you hear, try to take as a part of a bigger mosaic of how you are going to address the situation. Address it from every angle. Be excellent also in your addressing of a problem. Find excellence from every angle. This is the true legacy of prophethood. It's the true legacy of being a Muslim. It was to be interdisciplinary in the way that we thought, in the way that we approach something. Muslims didn't kick something and say, oh, abolish this. No, they say, where is the spiritual angle in this? How do we see this through the prism of God? So I want us to approach things that way so that hopefully we can attack something from every, I don't want to use a negative word, but so that we can address something from every angle and take the good in it. Find the good in it.
Inshallah, may Allah allow us to see the good in everything, inshallah. I have a last question, something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and it will be the last one, but they're too shy to even say it to their closest of friends. And this question was asked to me, and it was a sister who was really struggling, and she said that prior to marriage, she never thought she'd have a problem with being intimate with her spouse. And after they got married, with work, with kids, with in-laws and family, just things got so crazy. And she said, in the evenings, you know, he's much more relaxed, but I realized that I have a lot of things. I've still got to wake up in the morning and do the school run and make sure lunch is packed and all of those other things, which means that I'm not in the mood to be intimate with my spouse. And she said that I really feel it's affecting our relationship massively. So what advice would you give to people in that situation?
You know, we have so many resources to look at, but Muslims don't think that intimacy is dirty or shameful. We think that it is an act of worship. We see intimacy as an act of worship. So just like you prioritize your acts of worship and hopefully, you know, you pray your 5 times prayer, a part of being intimate with your spouse is a part of it's the legacy of the worship. The joy, the pleasure that comes in that is a legacy of the love that God has created in his creation. So you need to prioritize that as an act of worship. I think because it's something that you do with your spouse that you don't do with anyone else. It's something that, you know, Muslims really have seen as an act of beauty and an act that brings two people very close together. And I think that you will create an emotional disconnect between you and your spouse if the act isn't happening with the frequency that one of you wants. And I think that it's important because that is the only way to meet that need in a permissible, God-pleasing, God-fearing way. So if you have trouble finding the alignment with each other, there are many different resources that you can use to assist in finding the right times the right places, the right lighting, the right aromas, but you get to explore that with each other. Find that instead as a fun thing that you're getting reward for as worship. Set your intention, and then all the committed action will come from that intention. So my intent is to be pleasing to my Lord. My intent is to be in a state of worship and in a state of fun, in a state of pleasure, in a state of pleasing my spouse because I love them, in a state of closeness because I want my family to be close, because I want the love to grow, because I want my heart to be fulfilled, and I want my spouse's heart to be fulfilled as well. I also think that the act has to be that way. It has to be a two-way enjoyable experience. And so if it's not, then there are resources that one can tap into. There are many Muslim therapists who work in sex therapy, but you could also go to other individuals that work in the intimate spaces and the intimate settings to discuss, like, how do you find each other's rhythm, and how can you see that as a form of exploration and joy instead of a chore. And so I think the timing is important. Like I was saying, the lighting, the timing, what you have to tell yourself, how to clear your mind, the intent that you have, and then the committed action that springs therefrom. So don't feel hopeless. Instead, see it as an opportunity to learn, like, what are the different times or the different spaces that I could enjoy this act of worship to be pleasing to my Lord.
That's great. And I think it goes back also with, for those of you who have joined late, the very first question that we had about just, communication and seeing it as an opportunity as opposed to seeing it as a chore. Yes. The final thing that I just wanted to ask is that something I personally came across, and I thought that you've probably, with your experience and everything like that, is what resources can you recommend people who are struggling to find that kind of spark in their relationship? Because I recently came across something called, I think it was called Happily. Have you ever come across it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the date night boxes?
Yes.
Yeah, so I thought that was great. And I thought, I'm sure Yaz Guru has plenty of these ideas up her sleeve. So I thought maybe it would be a great idea to just sort of share with people ideas that, they do have kids, they can't go out and just go for a date night, go bowling or watch a movie. So what can people do in their homes to kind of create that space to actually rekindle that spark in their relationship?
Yeah, there's lots of things that you can Google online, actually, that are even free resources. There's resources like date night in boxes that get sent to you. They're like little questions, they're little ideas. There are lots of different resources. If you're, again, that intention is there, the committed action will come. So it could be that you guys cook together. It could be that you paint together. It could be that you ask each other interesting questions, that you unlock something about your childhood that you never really knew about the other person. I think the key is that when you spend quality time with your spouse, really getting to do something that you both enjoy, that is like, that's the synergy, that's the magic between two people. And find it as a sense of exploration, that you get to explore what you both like. Sometimes you have very separate interests, and sometimes that puts you kind of in the doldrums, like, oh man, he'll never like what I like, or she'll never want to do what I want to do. Instead, try it out. Have an agreement with each other that each week I'll do something that you like, and one week I'll do something maybe that I like, and introduce each other to your interests, to your separate interests, and see how it goes, and be open-minded about it. And what you'll see, subhanAllah, hopefully with the mawadda and the rahmah, with the increased love and the emotion, if your intent is in the right place, you will learn to figure out what interests you both connect on. And maybe you'll explore that, maybe, wow, I didn't really think I would like this, but like, this is not that bad. Or I kind of want to do this again. And I think that openness and that flexibility is where sometimes our heart is so clogged. Sometimes we're so blocked that we get to be unblocked. We get to be untethered from past hurt. We get to have that opportunity to let it go because we want to be lighter. We want to have joy. It's okay to feel the joy. Give yourself permission to feel joy with your spouse, even if they've hurt you a million times over. I really give this advice to myself before I give it to anybody else, because for so many years I felt very blocked with my spouse. Like I could not feel certain joy because of past pain and hurt, and that stuff still bubbles up. It's not like it's a cure, but I get to shift my mindset and say, well, what do we like to do together? What do we actually have fun together? And what is something that I didn't think it was fun, like going to basketball games. I didn't think that was fun at all, but like I actually found a lot of joy in that, like going to basketball games with my husband. I know we're not doing that very much now with COVID, but I'm just saying, like, you discover certain things that you guys both also really connect on, like UFC, for example. Like, I'd always kind of been into cage fighting, kind of got out of it, and then I like reconnected with my husband there, and then we're like, oh my God, let's do this. Then we're putting our kid in jiu-jitsu, and you know, we're discovering what shared interests could be there, but that comes with an open mind and an open heart. So I will say, like, you know, there's lots of ideas about doing dates inside the house, but mostly this is about trying to find ways to connect with each other. And trust me, if your heart's in the right place, you're going to find each other.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Jazakumullah khair. That was beautiful advice. Allah bless you. And thank you so much for joining us. It was really, really beneficial. Inshallah, we look forward to having you back next month, inshallah, with a new topic around the topic of relationships, inshallah. So have a great day, and inshallah, we'll see you soon.
I love you very much. Thank you. And make sure also that you are making prayers together. Couples that pray together stay together, whether that be dua that you say out loud, or hopefully, you know, being in a congregational setting. It's important for your children to see it, but it's also important for your own hearts. When you put two heart muscles together, they start beating as one. They start synchronizing. So hear your spouse when you're praying with them. There is a great power in that. And speak out loud the dua that you guys want for each other to create a shared vision for the future. And the last book I just wanted to recommend is 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John Gottman. It's an excellent book. It's called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And I believe it's one of those books that helps you rekindle things as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.